Good morning. Today we're talking about extreme ownership. Good morning, everybody. Josh Ezel, Briggs Real Estate and Property Management. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today we're talking about extreme ownership. Many of you have probably heard of Jocko Willink by now. He's written his book, several books, but the one in particular we're referencing is Extreme Ownership. If you haven't seen it, read it, check it out. It's probably on Amazon. It's probably everywhere. If you haven't had the opportunity to see him speak, check out one of his many videos or his podcast. You should certainly follow him on Instagram. Incredible. The guy is up every single morning and all you see is a picture of his watch to begin with, and then the next thing you see is a sweaty workout bench from when he worked out. I mean, the guy is a beast. Now, we're going to borrow one of the stories that specifically used in his TED Talk. It's in his book, and it has to do with him and his guys when they were in Ramadi, Iraq. Now, in 2006, they were in Ramadi, and at that time, that was the epicenter of the insurgents. I mean, any bad thing you could possibly imagine went on in Ramadi. And if you were going to be sent anywhere, I mean, that was the place of action, right? So at this time, there were a little bit of everybody in this area. So you had some army, some Marines, you had the SEALs, you even had friendly Iraqi soldiers working with us, right? Well, next thing you know, as he calls it, the fog of war sets in. And hails of bullets, screaming, sounds, explosions, just everything you could possibly think the horrors of war would entail. Now, as a little bit later, as he calls it, the fog of war then lifts, that's when the true reality and horror sets in about what had transpired. The fog of war didn't have them fighting against the enemy. That fog of war had them fighting against themselves. In other words, fratricide. The worst thing you could possibly imagine when you're fighting in war. And I have not been in battle. I'm not a soldier. I cannot take that honor. I can't. So this is a very, very ignorant perspective, but I can only imagine what it would be like. Not only did they fight themselves, but there was an Iraqi soldier, one of the friendlies, that had died. There were two other injured. One of his team was injured, and it was not good. So as you can imagine, word immediately went up the ranks, and he got a call from his the upper people saying, "Stop everything. We're on our way down. You're gonna have to talk about what happened." And basically, when his commanding officer got there, he knew he was going to have to break down every detail of what happened. So he started his debriefing. I mean, he was writing down, preparing everything. And as he clearly states, there were breakdowns and issues all over the place. I mean, not one person could take the blame because so many things had to transpire for this to happen. Right? And so he's writing it down, and it's not setting well. Something's just not right. It's like, yeah, this happened. That's not right, though. And he tried to do the best he can. So next thing you know, it's time for him to literally go to his debriefing. And about 10 minutes prior to him walking in, it becomes clear to him what the right answer is. And he walks in, and of course the debriefing starts, and so he gets up to prepare, and he looks over at his team. and he simply asked one question: who's to blame for what happened? Whose fault was this? And he just waits. Didn't have to wait very long. Next thing you know, one of his team raises his hand and says, it was me. It was my fault. I didn't keep a good enough eye on my Iraqi people. And Jocko looks at him and says, I appreciate that, but you're wrong. It wasn't just your fault. And then next person raises his hand. He's like, it was my fault. Had I communicated faster our location, they would have known it was us. And he's like, you know what? I appreciate that, but you're wrong too. And then proceeds down the line about several others say it was my fault. I shouldn't have fired until I knew who I was firing upon. I mean, there were plenty of examples of people messing up, and every single one of his team said, it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault. I take ownership. But when it boiled down to it, he's like, I appreciate that, but all of you are wrong. I'm your commanding officer. It was my fault. It was my fault. I was in charge. I take full responsibility for what happened. He didn't dwell on that. He then proceeded to say, this is what we learned. These are the mistakes. These are what we're now implementing to make sure this won't happen again, and we will move forward. Not only did he take full blame, but he wrapped it in that perfect package of, it's my fault, this is what happened, and this is what we learned from it. Finally, this is how we fix it. Many, many people in the face of something especially so serious would let their ego get in the way. But this is, and I loved this quote from him: control your ego so your ego doesn't control you. Control your ego so your ego does not control you. His commanding officers were so impressed with his team taking responsibility for what happened, and with him owning it to such a full extent, that two huge things happened that day. Number one, his commanding officers knew that they can trust him. They knew that he would take it seriously, that he wasn't going to shirk responsibility, that he was reliable, and that he can be trusted in conditions of power. Nobody's perfect. They went in there to fire people, to bust some heads and let people go because someone was to blame. But he took such full responsibility that they trusted him even more. Not only can his commanding officers trust him even more, but what about the people under his command? Did he throw them under the bus? No. Did they know that he would never leave them stranded, sitting there taking blame? Did they know that they could trust their commanding officer with everything? Absolutely. When everybody takes ownership for their mistakes and problems get solved. That's the takeaway for today. When everyone takes ownership of their mistakes, those mistakes get fixed. Think about that. Thank you for watching. Please like, share. I'm going to leave a link to Jocko's talk below. Check out all of his books, but Extreme Ownership is a fantastic book. And again, like, share, follow. I'll talk to you tomorrow.